Mr. Gary Cooper, the brother of Private Alan John Cooper of the 3rd Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, who was killed in action on the 26th of May 1968, to share his story as a family member who lost a brother.
Thank you. This is a personal reflection by a next of kin. My name is Gary Cooper, who's introduced, and I'm the brother of Alan. 3 RA, A Company, 2 platoon, and a little bit before in 1 platoon. In 2008, I was privileged and honoured to be in Canberra here with my brother Don, who is also with me here today, for the 40th anniversary of the Battle of Commemoration and Balmoral. For the first time, I met with some of Alan's fellow soldiers and officers. I thank those men who told me about Alan and the high regard that he was held in by them. To hear his soldier mates that have come out of the darkness of hell so many years later and talk about the war and Alan was very gratifying and emotional. Alan's story has been told many times. At the last host ceremony at the National War Memorial in May 2013, which was the 45th anniversary, this story was mainly about the battle and how Alan died. On January the 11th of this year, another last post ceremony spoke more in detail about Alan's life before joining up. Life in the early part of training, then being posted to 3 RA and more intense work, and then his embarkation to Vietnam. They told there what happened on arrival in Vietnam on the 27th of December through to the 26th of May when Alan was killed. I watched this live, and it was a tribute to be very proud of. His story lives on also at reunions, other commemorations, memorial sites, museums, books and other resources. My story is not about the battle or how he died, but what it was like for me as his brother. When Alan enlisted in 1965 and came home and told the family, I was away at the time. I am unsure how the news was received by the family, as it was not spoken about at the time. It was my feeling the family was in deep shock. I feel there was anger that here was a young lad who volunteered to enlist in the army at a time of many Vietnam War issues. It was said that Alan wanted to do more with his life, and I believe Alan was out to prove that he could be someone better than what others thought of him. My wife's brother was already in Vietnam with the 5th Battalion. Several friends also had brothers who enlisted or were called up, and we dreaded hearing any reports of their involvement. The news of soldiers being killed or wounded impacted many families. And then we had to face Alan going to war. I missed Alan's embarkation on HMAS Sydney from Adelaide on December the 16th, 1967, due to work commitments. The event was covered by live television and Alan and Mum were interviewed. Looking back at photos and talking to those present, it appeared as a time of excitement and celebration, with all the hugs and smiles being displayed. Our boys were off to war, and they'll be back before you know it. I feel these were nervous smiles, smiles hiding the fear that deep down we knew the possibility of never seeing them again. I treasure a photo of Alan and Mum both smiling and happy being interviewed prior to boarding. This was their last time together. Staying in contact. While posted in Australia, Alan did come home a few times on leave. Whilst away on duty, writing letters was the norm then. Once deployed to Vietnam, our main correspondence was through letters. Family and friends, however, did send over care packages, and Alan also sent gifts home such as dolls, cigarette lighters and other items. Only recently I have discovered some of these letters and was able to read them for the first time. The very first mail he posted to Mum and Dad was a postcard of HMAS Sydney. And on the back he wrote, "Dear Mum and Dad, when I get to WA I'll be posting this. We are afloat 6 hours out from Adelaide, and the lot are starting to feel a bit sick, and that goes for me too. Hope you like the film star. Well, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Love, Alan." Alan's letters told of how he loved to talk about family, friends, his car, football, how everybody was and what was happening. He also thanked everyone for the parcels and boxes of supplies, things from home, gifts, food, wine and beer. Details of tours of duty and his fellow soldiers, interactions with officers and command. His words of what he saw and experienced was daunting to read. In a personal letter I received at the time, Alan wrote to me saying he wanted me to wait to get married until he came home because he was going to be in my wedding. Smiley. People ask me why Alan was called Smiley. He was always smiling, and I think it was a girlfriend that called him Smiley. But Alan wrote in one of his letters to Mum and Dad in early May of '68, just before his birthday, "I was wet from head to toe and not very happy. Not happy at all. But everyone around me calls me happy, as I've always got a smile a mile wide on my face. When they ask me what I'm happy about, just say, you can't live life if you're not, and you have to keep smiling even though you are not happy sometimes. You see, I'm not coming home a nervous wreck and quick-tempered. Alan's attitude for life and his compassionate nature made him a real gentle guy, loved by all. I'm so proud of him, but had he lived, how and what would he be today? What resonates with me now 50 years on is just how much Alan is respected and held in high regard by all. My memories of Alan's time in Vietnam are varied and not always clear. It is said that war and the loss of a loved one destroys families. Alan's death has had a dramatic impact throughout our family. When deaths occur, feelings such as guilt, shame, remorse, bitterness, and anger can grip those left behind. However, others can be left with happier memories of respect, love, and forgiveness, and be at peace. Having given his life to his nation at such an early age, like so many before him, what a coincidence it was that Alan and his mate William, Bill, or some known as Lofty Thomas, were both killed on the morning of May 26, 1968. Alan was killed at Balmoral by mortar shrapnel and William killed at Coral by mortar shrapnel. Alan's remains were flown home. He was home at last. Now the pain is real. Alan was given a funeral with full military honours on June the 4th, 1968. The funeral was carried out on a very stormy, wet and windy day. A newspaper article describes this moment. It was a very emotional and gut-wrenching day, especially when the heavens opened up and burst into tears as the buglers sounded the last post. Elderly men and women wept. Teenagers cried and others fainted. Today, there are many resources available on the Vietnam War, especially on the internet. I only learnt of Project 68 recently after reading one of Alan's letters where Alan asked Mum and Dad if they had watched Project 68. I did not know what Project 68 was. So I went online and I found not only stories about Coral and Balmoral, but of the hellhole that they were. One thing that really, the Battle of Coral Balmoral, sung by Graham Roger. I'm sure some may have heard that. Then another song, 50,000 Australian Suns. The story of how the returning Vietnam War soldiers were treated on their arrival and then welcomed home again in 1987, a faint welcome home. I had never heard any of these songs before, and now I have the album title, They Answered the Call. At the commissioning of this Vietnam War Memorial in Canberra in July 1992, then Prime Minister Keating said in part that Vietnam veterans were heroes and should be considered alongside other Anzacs and diggers. They did their duty. The war had cut deeply into the Australian soul and divided the nation to an extent unequalled since 1917. Divisions over Australia's role in Vietnam had created a burden for veterans who believed in and loved their country, and extra pain for their families. Those that died gave their lives for Australia. My dad and our dad would have loved to have heard this, but he died of a heart attack in August 1978, 10 years after Alan's death. Dad was greatly affected by the Vietnam War and the young men that were killed earlier. The impact of Alan and William's death was a catalyst that after years of emotional pain, I feel that he also died of a broken heart over his loss. Then shortly after Alan's death, Mum told a reporter, this was 2 weeks after his death, and I quote, Mum said that her son was very proud to be in the army, but she added sadly, Alan wanted to do something with his life. He certainly did. On the 9th of November this year, my wife and I celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary, and the loss of Alan lives on. Alan's place was taken in my wedding group by his army mate, Roy. Alan's birthday was on May 7th. He would have been 70 years old this year. In conclusion, I leave you with some words from the chorus of the song, The Battle of Balmoral, in honour of all who were there. We cared for our mates just like brothers, and fought like Anzacs of old. We died and we bled for each other, and together we did ourselves proud at the Battle of Coral and Balmoral. To the 26 diggers who gave up their lives, your sacrifice won't be forgotten. And to all of the soldiers of 1 and 3 Ra, we did us proud at Coral and Balmoral. To all the soldiers who fought battles in Vietnam, your deed will live on in history. God bless you and thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for your very moving reflection. I now invite Father John Tinkler, MBE CSC, the Battalion Chaplain of the 1st Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment,